water bath canning and pressure canning, with more emphasis on pressure canning since that was the subject matter. Okay, but you have to understand the pH scale. And I remember sharing with you that the pH scale meant the potential hydrogen in a product. And everything that is acidic consists of all of your fruit, okay? And anything that is pickled with 5% acidic vinegar. So that means you can water bath cucumbers, you can water bath pickled cauliflower or broccoli or carrots or dilly green beans, okay? But if you're not pickling those vegetables, they have to be pressure canned, all right? Okay, so we're gonna move on now to pressure canning. So as I aforementioned, all fruit, including tomatoes, because some people don't know that tomatoes are fruit, they are acidic and they are very easy to sanitize through the hot water bath canning procedure. Okay, so let me just share a few things that I have canned. Now, right now, I don't have a lot on hand because we just got through the pandemic. I was buying less food from the grocery store, and I was really depleting my stock because I have a lot of fruit trees in my food forest. Unfortunately, I lost about 30 trees during some people call it the polar freeze, the Arctic freeze, whatever it was. We got down to 3 degrees in Texas, and that's like unheard of. I've been living here for 30 years, and we've never gotten a temperature that cold. So a lot of my fruit trees that were planted in an environment not to get real cold, and I bought them based upon the fact that they could survive a garden zone 8A without having temperatures below, let's say, 19 degrees. They went into shock and they died. But I'm not really concerned about it because that's why you plant more than you need. Because I have about 7 apple trees and I think I lost 2. One still may be alive and come back, but I just said all of that to encourage you. If you're going to plant your own food, it would be a good idea if you grew it too. Okay? All right. So now, here is stewed tomatoes. It is acidic. But the reason why I'm sharing this with you first is because if you're buying fruit out of the supermarket, you don't know if it's a hybrid or if it's an heirloom tomato that is acidic in nature, because the stores are insisting that farmers grow pretty looking tomatoes. They're all similar in size, coloring, and weight, unless it's a cherry tomato or a Roman tomato, or if it's just a regular looking tomato. Some of those tomatoes are hybrids and they're not all acidic. So you have to really know what you're growing or working with, or you can add lemon juice or citric acid to your food product to make sure that it is indeed acidic and safe to water bath can. Okay. Now, if you have any questions, because I still can't see your faces, but I know you guys can go in the chat room and our lovely moderator can assist you with that. But I'm requesting that you hold your questions until the end. Write them down. If anything that I've said doesn't make sense, or if I misspoke, feel free to ask me the question at the end of the presentation. Okay? All right. So now, to make sure, let me review again, to make sure that your fruit, which is a tomato, is acidic in nature, Your recipes will call for it to have either lemon juice or citric acid. And most home canners don't have a citric acid. So lemon juice is the common one. Now, last week, I think it was Quintel kept holding up that book for you. When you're water bath canning, and if you are adding vinegar to something, I'm going to suggest that you follow your recipe to the T, because we're not chemists, and we want to make sure that our food is being properly canned with the proper acidity, and that you won't have any problems later on. This was canned in 2019, and I still have some. Now, I have another product that has tomatoes in it, and just to show you the difference, on that day in March 2019, I had my water bath canner going, and I had my pressure canner going. And the reason why I pressure canned this tomato and vegetable pasta sauce is because I added a lot of pureed mushrooms, green, red, orange, yellow peppers, onions, and garlic. So that changed it from being an acidic into an alkaline product. So this one was pressure canned, and this one was water bath canned. All right. And the reason why you have to pressure can things that are alkaline is so that while it goes through the pressure canning process, it will destroy pathogenic, which is harmful, bacteria. Everybody with me? That's something I say all the time. I can't see your faces, so bear with me. Now, here's another example of a vegetable. These are peppers. They were water bath canned because the recipe in the Ball's canning book, and I have 3 or 4 of them. I think I let somebody borrow one. I think I have 3 and I never got it back. But this has the proper amount of 5% vinegar to make this acidic. And you could do the same thing with cucumbers. Just follow the recipe. Another example with vinegar. Now, let me share this with you. You don't have to have a recipe when you are just canning fruit. Let's say you have, like me, 5, 6 apple trees, and you just want to peel and take the core out, chop up or slice up your apples, and put them in water. If you're pre-exposed to diabetes like I am, my mother passed from complications of diabetes, and I lost a brother from complications of diabetes. So I limit my sugar intake. And I've been holding, I think it's called A1C. Anyway, whatever it is, it's 6.3 and 7.0, you're diabetic. So for a long time, I have resisted having to go on medication by preparing my own food so that I know exactly the amounts of sugar or anything in it. So I would just can peaches, apples, figs, what have you, with just water. Or you can can peaches in its own juice, or pear with a little apple juice. All of those are acidic, and you don't have to measure anything. And all you have to do is just peel, slice, dice, go through the canning procedure, and they're safe. Okay? All right. Now, let's talk about if you want to add salt. And this is something that I mentioned last week, but I remember that I did actually show you. If you have to add any salt to your food, I told you guys, use pickling salt. Can you see that? Yes. That's why I need my laptop, my host, so I can make sure that they can see it. This is pickling salt. It's real heavy. I've had it about 5 years in this Ziploc bag because I also have kidney disease. And I've been holding at stage 3 for 13 years because I limit my intake of salt. So when I make my pasta sauce, I have my basil, I have my parsley, I have my oregano. I don't put salt in it. Only thing I put salt in is when I'm making pickles. Because to me, pickles just don't taste good without no salt in it. Okay? And so you can use Himalaya salt, because I know some of you are wondering, and you're probably writing that down, Can I add a little sea salt? Can I add a little Himalaya salt? Yes, you can. The only reason why you don't use iodized salt is because that iodine in there, and some have other chemicals that keep it from sticking together, clumping together. That's the only reason why the iodine is in there. But if you use regular iodized salt, your jars won't be pretty. They won't be clear. You won't be able to see straight through them. So it won't hurt the food or hurt you unless you eat too much salt and raise your blood pressure and all that. But the salt itself is okay. It's just that it's going to make your jar cloudy. Okay, so I want to move on to some other things. So now everybody's with me. We know that we can make jellies, jams, preserves, whole fruit, diced fruit, chopped up fruit, applesauce, fig sauce, peach sauce, pear sauce, you name it, I've made it. You can, all of those things you can, water bath can, okay? Now let's move on to your jars. I mentioned some of this last week, but I need to go over it again in case somebody is in this class and they weren't in the other class. I'm going to explain to you what's in this jar in a few minutes, but this is your half a pint jar that you use for water bath or pressure canning. Here is your pint. And then we have one that is in between a quart and a pint, and it's actually, I think it's 2.5 cups. And this is the canning jar that Balls and Care, which they have merged corporations, they recommend that you use this jar when you're freezing because it gives you a line. Because I know this is not about, what I'm going to tell you is not about water bath canning, but I want you to know that when you can freeze in these jars, but you have to leave room for expansion because everything that freezes from a liquid to a solid will expand. Okay. And then here are your quart jars. There are two of them, two types. You have one that has a wide mouth, and then you have one, hi Elizabeth, I see you. And you have one that has a regular mouth. And these wide mouth jars are really good when you're packing, let's say, peach halves, and you've got big, juicy peaches, and you don't want to dice or slice them up. You can put the whole peach in here if you want to, or take the stone out of the peach and put it in half. Did she say we can freeze? Yes, you can. You can freeze in any of these jars. This one is specifically made for freezing, but all of these jars can be packed cold and go into the freezer. Don't put any hot food and then put it in the freezer because that's going to crack. But getting back to water bath canning, you have a wide mouth jar and you have a regular mouth jar. I like to use the wide mouth jars, as I said earlier, for whole fruit, and I also like to put meat in it. It's just easier to pack. Now, you have lids. You have the wide lid for the wide jar. You have the wide ring for the wide jar. You have the small lid for the regular, I should say regular lid and a regular ring. Okay, so I've shown you all the different types of jar, and there's some fancy ones that are antique, that have color with them and little decorative jars. All of those, as long as they are a canning jar, they can be used, no matter how cute and dainty they are. Now I'm going to review the actual procedure. The first thing you want to do is to sanitize your jars. You want to dip them in boiling water. Okay, you want to dip them in boiling water, and you want to make sure that you thoroughly clean the jar. You don't have to really leave them in a long time when you're doing pressure canning. You want to leave them in a little bit longer when you are water bath canning, because that procedure is a shorter procedure without pressure. So make sure that you thoroughly sanitize your jars with boiling water. And then you want to pick them up with, then this is your jar gripper. This part here, if you've been new and you didn't weren't here last week, this is the part that you hold in your hand. And this part of this metal contraption, whatever you want to call it, the tool has rubber around here, and that rubber will heat up when you put it down in the water and pick up that jar, and you pick it up by the rim. You don't try to pick it up by here because that can slip. Not to scare anybody, just hold it here. And even if this had boiling food in it, it would not drop as long as you're squeezing right here. Everybody feel me? Okay. Now, so you are going to immerse your jars in hot water, take them out, and you can turn them upside down on a clean towel. You can also put them in a oven after you sanitize them or wash them, and put them in the oven at 250 and let them stay there warming while you're working with your hot food. If you're working with cold food, turn them upside down and put them in a jar. If you have a dishwasher with a heat cycle, like I have to dry them, you can wash them in the dishwasher and just leave them on the heat cycle, and they'll still be warm when you get ready to can. Okay, so now let's pretend we peeled our peaches and we took the cores out of the stone out of the fruit for the peaches, and they are cold. Okay, so then we will take our funnel that has been specifically made for canning jars, and it'll fit the narrow or the regular mouth, and it will also fit the wide mouth. Doesn't matter. And then we're going to we're doing cold pack. Then we're going to take our ladle, and I love this one because it has a little hook, and it'll attach on a side of the pot or bowl that you're working with. And we're going to put our peaches in and then our juice. And if we're cold packing, after we do that, we're going to take our magnetic lid picker upper and we're going to, our lids are going to be in a jar, in a pot where you boil them for just a few minutes. You used to have to boil them for 5 minutes. You don't have to do that anymore, according to Balls. They say as long as they're moderately warm, you can put them on, but don't pick them up by your fingers. Pick them up so you may have bacterial oil or anything. So let me see if you can see that right. Yeah, you can see that good. You're gonna pick it up like so, and then you can put your finger here and slide off. Now your rings do not have to be sanitized, okay? Your rings don't have to be sanitized. You can just pick them up and put them on because they're not coming in contact with the water or with the, they're not coming in contact with the jar. But before you do that, I just want to show you the sanitation part of the jars. Sanitize the lid. You don't have to sanitize this because it's not coming in contact with the food. Everybody understand? I can't see anybody, but I hope everybody understands. If not, write your question down. Now, understood. Thank you. Now, let's say you cook your peaches with some sugar from the recipe that you followed from the Ball's Book of Canning. You will always wipe the rim of the jar with paper towel or a clean kitchen towel, and you want to go around the rim and get everything off. You're not worrying about right here, just right here, the edge there. You want to go around like so. But if you're dealing with sugar or grease, You will always use a clean paper towel. This is vinegar. Don't put a dirty towel or used in paper towel inside of the vinegar. Always have a clean one. And you want to make sure that there's no oil or no vinegar, oil or no sugar, and you take that vinegar. And yes, vinegar is a sanitizer. You don't have to use vinegar. You can use a dry towel and do it a couple of times. I always use vinegar, and that is why this jar is still sealed since 2016. Now, Ball's recommend that you only can food for 18 months. And that's because they don't want to have a liability of somebody not being very sanitary. The jar is not clean. They didn't wipe the rim of the jar off, and it came loose and it got mold. And then they try to sue the company saying it was something wrong with the rim. But they have so many safety precautions that you should follow that you're not going to be able to sue. Okay. And now they have lowered, since 2 years ago, since 2020, they have lowered the amount of time that they say food is safely canned, for how long you can have it. I'm telling you, it'll last longer if you know that you know that you know that you follow all the procedures and you periodically check your food and nothing is leaking, no mold. You know what I'm saying, guys? It'll last longer. Okay? All right. So now let's get back to the hot packing. After you have wiped with your vinegar, it'll be at this point with the hot pack that you put your warm lid on and then your ring. Now, here's what I'm going to say that's going to be a little controversial. Some people use the lids over and over. They say their mother did it, their grandmother did it, their aunts did it, so they're going to do it too. I don't. I never reuse a lid. No, let me take that back. I never reuse a lid for canning. I may use it for crafts. I make jewelry. I may use it to store. Here is my monk fruit sweetener with a plastic lid so I can put in my decaf coffee every morning. So if I don't have any of these, I will use a used lid. But they're so hard to get on and off that I just ordered these from Amazon and just screw them on. But I'm just saying, if I was to have a lot of beads in a jar and I had a used lid, I'm going to tell you I used it in that area. Now, some people say they use them over and over and over because their mother, father, whatever used them. But these lids are getting thinner. Now, these are old new lids. They've never been used. And you can look at this circle. I think you can see that real good. Yeah, you can see the circle around here has more rubber on it. The newer lids, because I bought a lot of lids like 3 years ago. So all of mine are kind of with the thick one. I don't have a new one, but I've seen them. They have half the amount of rubber around here. And this rubber is what actually seals it, on the jar. So if you are reusing lids, I recommend, unless you have one like this, don't do it. I just wouldn't take that unnecessary risk. Okay? All right. And so now you have all of your jars done. Either you did the cold pack or you did the hot pack. I think something's showing here. Cold pack or the hot pack. And you're going to put it into your pressure canner. In your water bath canner. And here's a water bath canner. It's less than $30 at Walmart. Okay, you can order from Amazon, Tractor Supply. You can go into Target. Everybody has them now because since the pandemic, everybody is learning how to can, so that when stores start doing price gouging, you have a lot of food at home. I think I told you last week, I can count on my one hand, how many times I've been outside or off of my property shopping. Because I have everything I want delivered. I don't take chances with this COVID-19. But anyway, so this is the pressure canner. I'm sorry, guys, water bath canner. And this is what you put your jars in, because just like I told you last week with the pressure canner, it had that metal plate at the bottom so that your jars never come in contact with the direct pot heat. This is the same way. So when you're loading up your jars, let's pretend these are all sanitized, full of food, and they also have the lids and the rings on them, and you want to fill up your canner. Then you can see that's real good. Yeah. Then you're going to lift this up and set it down. I'm going to lean it a little bit so you can see how it folds right across the top. Now, before you put your water in, when you're doing the cold pack, you can add a little vinegar to it. I always use, whatever I don't use, wiping off the lids, I pour that in it. I already told you how to keep your food from getting cloudy, and that was by using a pickling salt, right? I got the wrong top. But anyway, I said that when you pressure can, you remember that little plate that you put in the bottom of the pressure canner to keep your jars from coming in direct contact with the hot bottom of the pan, because if you don't do that, it'll crack. The same thing applies with this little guard, this little basket. It keeps the glasses from accidentally touching the bottom of the canner, okay? So it won't crack, okay? Now, so I gave you two scenarios. One that you cold pack, you're gonna put it in your canner and you're gonna add tepid water until it covers completely, at least about an inch above the top of the jars, okay? Now, if you were hot packing, you would start your water already boiling in your canner. Let's say you cook some pears, okay? And you put some hot juice in one of your jars, or all of your jars. So you have your pears in here, and then you're putting hot juice in there. And then you're going to wipe the rim of the jar, and then you're going to put on your lid, and that's a wide one. You're going to put your lid on, and then you're going to put your ring on, and you're going to tighten them just finger tight. That's finger tight. When you do this, and you keep tightening it up, that's too tight. So you don't want it. See, I can hardly even open it. Now, let's put the lid on again. It's after you have wiped it off. And I use vinegar when I wiped it off because I have sugar in my syrup, in that hot liquid. Then I want to just turn it until it tightens up just a little, no extra. And then you're going to put it into the canner. Everybody got it? Now you have warm water in here. So you need to have a tea kettle or a pot on with more warm water to make sure that you cover at least an inch above the top of the jars and the lids and the rims. Does that make sense? It's very important. Now, with pressure canning, last week I told you follow the manufacturer's directions on pressure canning. You need to add the amount of water that they tell you for your specific canner. But with water bath canning, the whole jar has to be submerged into the water. It has to be completely covered. And then you will use the recipe that you found in your Ball's book of canning or whatever canning book you use for hot water bath canning, and you will boil it for the amount of time that the recipe calls for. Now, let's say the recipe calls for 15 minutes to water bath can it. You don't time the amount of time from when you first put the jar in. You will start timing when it comes to a boil. Then you start your timer. Okay, because if you don't start it when it's actually boiling, you may not boil it long enough because you didn't configure the time it took for it to come up to the boiling point. Okay, so now let's review that again. You want to make sure that you sanitize your jars. You want to make sure that you sanitize your lids. You want to make sure, and this is one I didn't tell you. Let me go back up. But I told you last week, but we might have new people in here. Before you fill your jars, you want to make sure that you go all the way around the rim and look for or feel for nicks or cracks or chips in your jar. You want to examine your jars while you're washing them and sanitizing them. Okay, because if there's a nick, a chip, or crack, it's going to crack in your canner. So you would use those jars for crafts or something like that. Okay, but not with food. So now we have our cold food in a cold jar in a cold water of canner, water bath canner. Then we have them here. Let's say it takes 5 minutes for it to come to a boil or 10 minutes for it to come to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, start your timer. Now, keep this in mind. When you are putting hot food into a warm jar with warm liquid, your canner is already on, right? It's already coming to a warm up. You don't have it like a medium heat, not necessarily on high heat, because you don't want the water to be hotter than the jar. Okay, and you're going to go through all the procedures of wiping the rim off. And if you have syrup, you know you're going to use a little vinegar or wipe several times. And then you're going to put the lid on. And then you're going to put the ring on. And you guys know that these are not fitting well in my demonstration because nothing's wet to secure it. Then you're going to tighten it up just a little bit, finger tight. Once it gets like that, that's it. And you're going to put it in. Now, your canner is full. It has warm water in it. At this point, you will wait until it comes to a boil. You may add some hot water from your tea kettle or your pot of water. Okay? Make sure that the lids are completely covered with about an inch space there. Wait until it comes into a boil and then start your timer. Now, when your time is up, you don't have to go through all of that, making sure that there's no pressure in the canner. Once it comes to a boil, you put the top on. When the time is up, take the top off. You can wait a few minutes if you want to, but you don't have to. You can just bring them out like so. Let them cool a little bit. Then you're going to take your, what I do with it. Oh, here we go. Your jar lifter. And you will have prepared an area. Let's pretend that this paper towel is a real towel. And then you're going to take your jar lifter. And these have lids on it. And it depends on how big your jars are. if you have real small jars, leave them undisturbed for 12 hours. If you're using quart size, you're going to leave them undisturbed for 24 hours. Okay? It'll be at this time that I'm going to take your questions, but I have some other tips that I'm going to give you. I got a feeling that I'm going to be able to answer your questions and give those tips at the same time. Okay, so if the first person would ask the question. You cannot stack jars in a, hey, Khadijah, good to see you again. You can stack jars in a pressure canner, but not in a water bath canner. And by the way, I just thought somebody was going to ask me, can you use a regular pot for pressure canning? And you can. You can take any large pot, as long as you put a towel or some pot holders at the bottom to sit the jars on, if you don't have a basket to fit that jar. So no. What is the purpose of pouring a little vinegar in the water? Oh, I thought I said that. It keeps your jars from getting old and dull and cloudy. Okay? If the recipe calls for vinegar, can I use apple cider vinegar even though it calls for white vinegar? Yes. As long as it says, and I knew somebody was going to ask me that, as long as it says that it has 5% acidity. And it's right here on your and I read somewhere that they don't even make vinegar anymore unless it's 5% acidity.
Don't forget, Lady Cheryl, when people raise their hands, they want to talk out loud with their questions. You might want to alternate. Like,
okay, repeat that again, please.
Ms. Mason has her hand up, so when they put their hand up, that means they want to ask a question out loud. They want to put their microphones on.
Okay, I only see Khadijah. Did I get all of your questions, Khadijah?
Hi, Miss Cheryl.
Hey.
Yeah, no, I didn't even know how to write the question.
That's okay.
I wanted to, it was two different questions. One was, I found a recipe for oven roasting your tomatoes with the garlic, and then they make an oven roasted tomato sauce. My question was, is there a way to pack them without necessarily mushing them so you still have that tomato slice sort of in the jar as opposed to, having to mush it? Can I do the oven roasting with the garlic, the tomatoes, and the oil, but just have it like more in slices of preserved, the texture? Or
yeah, usually when you oven roast or broil them or do them on the grill outside, they're firmer because the water is dehydrated when you do that. So they don't get all mushy. Let me see. I might have something over here. This is oven roasted peppers. And you can see the olive oil, but I pressure canned them. But you can see the pieces are still whole. And this was done January 2020. I hope that answers your question. Because when you oven roast them, you take a lot of water out so they don't be mushy. Okay?
In order to can it?
When you can it?
I have to put water back in the jar in order to can it.
Oven roasted tomatoes by itself will be fine.
Oh.
With water or tomato juice. But you mentioned garlic and something else. Now you're going to have to pressure can.
Okay.
Okay. Elizabeth Hall, what's your question? I love is that a hat or a scarf? Whatever it is, I like it.
It's like a bandana.
It's cute.
Okay, my question is, do you strictly have to use like the ball lids for the ball jars? Or
No.
can you use like a what you call it, generic ones?
Yeah, they have them like at Walmart and Family Dollar. You can use them, but they have to be labeled specifically for canning, meaning that they have been tested that they can hold that high heat. But I will say this, I'm in a couple of canning groups on Facebook, and some people have complained that the generic lids don't work. Then there are others that say they work fine. I'm willing to bet you those are the people that do the extra precaution, wiping down with the vinegar and that type of thing to make them work.
Okay, and I have a second question
Yes.
too. I have the ball canning book, but it doesn't. I know you said like the things that you can, but I'm always like confused at the things that you can and the things that you can't.
Okay.
Is there like a list someplace?
Okay. You can just know this. When you're pressure canning, you're gonna do your own thing. It doesn't matter what you put in there. As
Mhm.
long as you have the processing time for meat, if you have some meat in it. Let me find something. I knew somebody was going to ask this question.
You don't know me,
Let's take this
man.
one with the greens with the meat. Okay. You could put your garlic, you could put your red pepper flakes, you could put jalapenos in here. You can do whatever you want to do. But because you have meat in it, you have to pressure can it for 90 minutes. So let's say you don't have meat and you have a lot of mixed vegetables. You have to pressure can it for whatever that book tells you, uh, the highest amount of the ingredients that you use. So if you have corn, I'm gonna make this up, okay? Let's say corn has to be pressure canned for 15 minutes, carrots 13 minutes, peas 10 minutes. You're gonna pressure can for 13 minutes. You're gonna take the highest one. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I love when you ask questions because it's some information that other people might want to know. And I'm looking right here on my screen, and you all can see my screen is not covering right over there. I had an order. You see peanuts on the floor, those little packing peanuts from the order that I got from Amazon. So y'all excuse me for that. I'm not nasty, I promise you. I just
We wouldn't
got
have
that
known
order
that.
in before I started um this class. Okay, is there another question?
There is one in the chat.
One in the chat. You want me to take it or are you gonna handle it?
I'll read it out loud for you.
Good, because I don't want to mess up.
It says, I am not clear on what should be cold pack canned.
Repeat that again.
What should be cold packed canned? So
What should you cold pack in? All fruit, unless you want to put sugar and syrup in it, then that's going to be warm. And you said canned, so I'm just going to flip it and say I like to cold pack chicken. I like to cold pack chicken, but I have to pressure can that. But I love to open up a jar of peaches, pears, apples with no syrup or sugar in it. And that's my snack. And I know I'm eating healthy. Okay. And you can cold pack tomatoes with tomato juice. It just depends on what you're doing. I hope I answered that question. Okay. Is there another question? If you cold pack fruit, can we add cinnamon and other spices to it? Yes, but be careful when you start leaning toward, like for example, cinnamon and apple, that's fine. But if you start leaning towards something that is a vegetable, it might not be acidic. That I love. And I have several of them, but they're in the library. These are right over there. Okay. You can go in the index of any canning book, and it will give you The recipe, it'll let you know if you can't see that. You can't see that. I'm sorry. It'll let you know if it should be pressure canned or if it should be water bath can, and it'll give you the time. But always remember, when you pressure can, you don't have to follow an exact recipe because you're going to pressure can it for the appropriate amount of time for that product, that food. But when you water bath canning, you got to be a little bit more careful because you're not taking it through that pressurized treatment, and you want to make sure that it's still acidic. Some of the things that you can need to be blanched first, and some things don't. I think that's why I like cold packing with just water or the juice of fruit when I am water bath canning, because then I don't have to measure. But when you start making jellies and jams and that type of thing, and you need sure gel and a certain amount of sugar, you got to be a little bit careful with the measurements so that your finished product is what it should be. For example, I make some mistakes to try to do it on my own, and I ended up with strawberry syrup as opposed to strawberry preserves or strawberry jam. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Did I answer your question? When canning in juice, should you use a juicer to extract the juice, or should you just use store-bought? You don't have to do either. When you canning, when you preparing your fruit, it just comes out automatically. I have a juice extractor, a steamer to use when I'm making wine, but really when I'm peeling fruit, if I'm cooking it or warming it up, it already is going to extract the juice. And I'm not saying that you can't buy store-bought juice and use it, but read the chemicals. If it's 100% juice, fine. But if additives in it, I don't see the point in using that because you're trying to stay away from all those chemicals. I survived cancer in 1992. I'm very particular about what goes inside of my body and on my body. And that's why I make my natural products for hair and skin, because of that very same reason. I'm very particular about using chemicals. So I wouldn't buy store-bought juice unless it's, like I said, if it's 100% juice and no additives. Okay.
Okay, before the next question in the chat, we have two people that raised their hands. So I would say to let Ms. Hall ask a question, and then we can come back to Ms. Michelle in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, I was going to get my book. I got the Ball Complete book of home pressure, and
I have that book.
I think I missed a little bit of what you said about looking in the index and it'll tell you the preparation. Is that only in the book that you were looking in?
No, most of them, when you look at the recipes,
in the
they'll tell you.
Okay, I understand.
For example, this book I'm looking at right now in the low acid foods, it says you can put the 3.5 cups of carrots, whole kernel corn, lima beans, 3 cups of zucchini, 1 cup of chopped red bell pepper. Then it says salt, optional. And then water, and it doesn't tell you the amount of water. So some things you can figure out on your own if you wanted to have a lot of water or if you wanted to have salt. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. Thank you.
So it doesn't give you, they'll let you know if it's something that you have to do exact. And those things are when you're making jellies, jams, and preserves. Some fruit have a lot of natural pectin in it, and you don't need to use sure gel to help it coagulate.
I have another question too. I actually have apples, and I was going to try to make the apple pie.
Say that again. You have apples, and you're trying to make apple what?
Apple pie filling.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of recipes and balls for that.
I went to Walmart and I couldn't find the clear gel. But I found something else. I think it was sure gel. Are they the same thing? It comes in a box.
Basically, they are.
Okay.
And you would follow the directions on that package.
Okay.
Because you don't want to, you follow directions of one, say like you got, you know what I'm saying, two different products, and they may work a little bit differently.
Yeah, because like the recipe in here called for the clear gel, which is not what I got. So would I? So I don't like. Would I go by the recipe in the book, or would I go by what's on the box?
I would go with the box
Okay.
because that's what you're using.
Okay.
Okay, okay. Miss Khadija?
Hello. Question. Like I was trying to make salsa, and
Uh-huh.
out of the recipes, when I found them either in the book or online, all call for a vinegar base, but I don't care for vinegar. I wanted to know, could I substitute it for lemon juice?
Yes.
Like the 2 teaspoons, I think it is, for the smaller jars.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You can substitute, and you can use lime juice, lemon juice. You could use rice vinegar, red wine vinegar, but you just don't like all vinegars.
I mean, I love my vinegar in certain things, but like in a salsa, I didn't want vinegar in a salsa, you know?
Oh, see, I do. But I like that vinegary taste, so.
Okay.
And I even make my own vinegar.
Okay.
I make apple cider vinegar with my peels and cores. And I have a YouTube channel. I know you probably know that already. And you can check out how I make vinegar. And the other young lady, I think I have applesauce on YouTube too. I have a canning and preserving playlist, but I don't do a lot of videos on that anymore because of my company and my garden, my food forest. I just don't have the time, to be honest with you. It takes a lot of time. You have to stop and film everything you're doing when I can just bam, 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 and get it done. Okay, is there another question?
Yep. I don't know if you answered Michelle's question about do things last longer when pressure canning as opposed to water bath canning?
I think so. Yes, because when you can through pressure canning for your altitude and the amount of weight that is on that canner, it does last longer. This is 2016, and this was pressure canned. And it's just something about it. I don't want to open up this last jar until I grow some more green beans, just to prove my point that it does last a long time. I'm sorry, I didn't see your question. Is there another one?
Did we answer your question before, Miss Regina, about canning and juice? Did I miss that when we were doing the explanation?
I think we did talk about juice.
Okay, then.
I have a question.
Okay.
This is my tie. And I did buy my candy book, Miss Cheryl. This is the complete book of home preserving. So will that work too?
Yes.
Will that work too? Okay.
Yes.
My question is 2-part. One, when you're canning, before you put the lids on, should you debubble?
Look what I have in my hand. A debubbler. And that was one of the things that I remember when I hung up from this Zoom meeting last week that I didn't show, and I was saving it for last. It's amazing how you brought that up, and I got it in my hand. You should debubble any time you have something that is not liquid, just straight liquid. And if you see an air bubble, then you should debubble. So let's just pretend. We've got chunky tomatoes in here. You want to take your debubbler and go down the sides, go all the way around until you see that there are no bubbles or air pockets or holes. Okay? Thank you for bringing that up, but I was getting ready to mention it. That's wonderful. I love when, I don't think things are coincidences. I think that meant to happen. But I was sitting here with it right here in my hand.
Can you water bath cowboy candy, or does it have to be pressure can?
What, cowboy candy?
Yes.
No, I pressure can it to be on the safe side. because of the fact that it has a lot of sugar in it, and I don't put a lot of vinegar like that in cowboy candy to bring to bring the jalapeno peppers down to acidic. It's not enough in there, so I pressure candy. And look how nice it looks. And it's been here a year and a half.
Okay.
Seems like when you pressure can stuff, it lasts longer anyway. Or maybe because we eat fruit and stuff like that real fast, we don't have a lot of that left or around. Because anytime my grandkids come over, you can forget it. Big Mama, can we have some peaches? Big Mama, can we have some strawberries? So I can't keep that long. Okay. Are there any other questions? You are welcome to answer them or ask them. Okay. Well, I guess this will wrap up this Zoom
We have
class on water bath canning. I think I did cover everything that I wanted to cover tonight.
We have one question in the chat just before you go.
Okay.
Is there a set amount of jars need to be filled to, as in how full?
Is there a set amount of, say that again, I can barely hear you.
Is there a set amount of jars need to be filled to, as in how full the jars should be, I believe?
I'm not understanding your question. Is there a set amount? Where do you fill it to?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? How far you should put the food or liquid? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah, that's what I meant. Like, can you can something that's half full, or would it be
don't do that.
Filled? Could it be filled?
Use another jar. Use a smaller jar, or put a lid on and put it in the refrigerator and eat that. If you just got a little bit left.
Or do you worry about I got it too full? Is that a concern?
Yes, you don't want to get it too full. You want to put it right there, and that's a good question. You want to put it right there, and know this. Even if you fill it all the way up, this is heavy. The greens will siphon out and it will be in your pressure canner. Anything that's real heavy. But that's still okay because it's still going to seal. See that juice coming down there?
Mm-hmm.
But some of this siphoned out during the process in 2019. And by the way, these are hot mixed greens.
Okay, thank you.
So you can fill it to where you're supposed to. This is heavy, green beans, but you see how it
Who's that?
siphoned out, and you have some in your water. So but that doesn't mean it didn't seal.
He's very aggressive. Yeah, very rude to me.
Is somebody else talking?
He's always been rude, but we've had a good relationship since he.
Okay, I'm hearing another conversation.
Yeah, I just muted them. I don't think they meant to talk to us.
Yeah.
I have one more question in the chat.
Okay.
What is pectin?
What is pectin?
Yes.
Natural pectin is a thickening agent that God just created. Is in the fruit. But you can buy pectin for fruits that don't have a lot of natural pectin, and that's in your Sure gel, your clear gel, that type of thing. You'll see it in the canning area in the supermarket or stores, Walmart or Target. You go into that area and you'll see it. Okay?
We have one.
And that type of tomato that I was trying to remember earlier in the presentation that is very acidic is called a paste tomato. The brand or the variety I like to grow is Amish paste because it's a real meaty, acidic tomato and doesn't have a strong core, just the little ends you have to cut off. And all of it makes a good tomato paste or tomato sauce. Just ran through my brain.
Okay, we have 4 minutes left and 2 questions. So we can let Ms. Hall ask her question first. Keep it to 1 question so we have enough time. And then we have one more question in the chat. So Ms. Hall?
Okay. My question is, like, I know that you have your garden, and I have my garden too, Miss Cheryl. But like, how do you keep your vegetables until you're ready? Till you have enough to can? Do you freeze them? Can you can them after you freeze them, or do you just put them in the refrigerator, leave them on the counter?
Very, very, very good question. Let me get something for you. This is my chicken, anything in the freezer soup, or you can call it stew. You can heat this up and serve it over noodles or rice, but it has chicken, corn, carrots, green beans, peas. I love hot, so it's red pepper flakes in here. And there's something green here. I don't know if it's broccoli, which it probably is, or if it's kale. What I do is I blanch. You all know what blanching is. After you clean and cut up your vegetables, according to what it is, you would just dip it in hot water for 2 minutes, a minute, or whatever, and bring it back out. And then you freeze it. And you try to get all the water and air out of the bag. And I have one of those food savers that I use that get the water and the pressure out. Then you put it in your freezer. I do that all during the summer because you guys know it can get to 115 in Texas. It's too hot to be canning unless you have an outdoor kitchen. And who wants to be outside in 115 degrees pressure canning? Because you have to pressure can vegetables. So I put it in my freezer. Then when it cools down, I take everything out of the freezer because I'm in the spring, I'm going to be needing that freezer space to put my new vegetables that I'm growing, right? Then I put it all together and make a soup or a stew. So I hope I answered your question. But I will say this, the only thing that you do not have to blanch before you freeze it to can it at a later date is onions and sweet peppers. Actually, all peppers. Cowboy candy was made from frozen jalapenos that were never blanched. Did I answer your question?
Okay, you answered her question. We have one last question. You guys
Okay.
answer it quick because we're in our last minute. When you open a jar that's been pressure canned, is there a sound that you hear?
Oh, yes. You hear like a whoosh. You will hear it releasing the pressure. I don't want to open a jar to describe it to you because I already have my meal cooked for the next 2 days. But there is a sound like whoosh. You'll know it's unmistakable. And you just like when a can seals, you hear a ping. You hear that ping in your sleep. If you have stuff on your counter and you can before you went to bed, you'll hear it popping all night. All of them are sealing, and there is an unmistakable sound when you open up the can. And once you hear it, you'll always remember it. I have time if somebody else has another question.
Well, the Zoom may log you off in a moment because the time was set to 8.
Okay.
So
I just want to make sure that I answer all the questions.
Yeah. How do you know if you have a failed seal?
Oh, that's a good one. That is a real good one. Let's look at all of these jars. You see it's flat. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but there's like a little circle right down here. Can y'all see that? Yeah, I can see it right there. Okay, yes.
Then it gets
You
sucked
take
in.
that jar out with your lifter and you waited 24 hours and it still has that indentation right in there, that's a false seal. It has to be smooth like this. And you can turn it upside down after 24 hours and make sure nothing is leaking. If it has that indentation, it's a false seal, and you can hold it over a sink. Don't do this on the counter. Unscrew this and start tipping it over, and that lid is going to come off. Trust me, I've done it before.
This is the very last question. We got to say goodbye. Can you reprocess if you have a failed seal?
Yes. Yes, you can. Especially when it's water bath can. I know we've been jumping back and forth because it's hard to talk about one type of canning without talking about the other. But I would not reprocess or repressure can anything, because 90 minutes, for example, this is cold packed meat. It's still all together, but it's thoroughly cooked. This is cooked meat. You see how it's all shredded? This will be good in vegetable soup. This would be good in barbecue chicken. Drain it, shred it, and put your barbecue sauce on it. My grandkids love it. But you can make chicken and rice, chicken and noodles, whatever you want out of here. But the point I'm making is, if you pressure can this and you had a false seal, you pressure can it again, it's going to be mush, because you have to pressure can it for 90 minutes. Make sense? I think it does. Yeah. Okay, I think that's the last question. I thoroughly enjoyed you all. I hope you all invite me back for other classes. I'm a licensed cosmetology instructor, and there are a lot of other things that I could help you with.